Hello, you're all very welcome to podcast two with myself, Adam. And I'm delighted to have on the other line Niels, who is a strength conditioning coach from Germany. He's worked with elite sprinters and elite swimmers and also semi-pro rugby players. Niels, thanks for jumping on and tell us a quick background about yourself.
Thanks, Adam, for the invite. Really looking forward to this. Yeah, you summed it up a bit already. So I'm a full-time strength and conditioning coach with elite youth swimmers, the best of the best in their age groups, and I'm working as well as a personal project in business with rugby players in Germany to help them get faster, fitter, and stronger on the field, rehab from injuries. I play rugby myself, so that's really a passion for me, and I'm very happy to work with these guys.
We'll touch on the swimming side of things first, Neil. So what are the main problems you see with swimmers in terms of the physical capacity? And like, how are you using, like, what methods in terms of strength conditioning are you using to rectify
them? So because it's kids, age 10 to 19, I really focus on the basics, just get them strong, not being too specific. I guess that's the one thing as well that I see is the biggest problem, or that people are still doing. They try to over specialize their strength training, try to replicate the sport in the gym. But especially with swimming, it's impossible because you're not in the water, you're on land, and the biomechanics, the gravity works differently on land. So trying to replicate movements there, in my eyes, is a mistake, and it doesn't lead to many great results. You can achieve more with doing actual strength work. So yeah, I focus on that. For the younger kids, having a big movement variety, they want to be literate in movements. They should know how to move because they're only doing swimming from that age on. They don't do any other sports. That's why for me it's important to give them different inputs. And also with movements in the gym, getting good and consistent with the basic big movements that everyone knows, like squat, bench press, pull-ups, push-ups, as well as shoulder presses, some deadlifts, and also some Olympic lifting as well.
Yeah, brilliant. And I think, like, you know, I like the point you made there is, you know, it's general. Like, I think it is, you can be trying to be too fancy as an S&C coach and sport specific, and you see all the time, this is a sport specific. The only real sport specific, as we know, is the actual sport itself. And sometimes when you try and be too fancy, trying to replicate the actual movements within the game, you're not actually making your athlete better. And I think, you know, as Louis Stillman says, like, it's all general. And the bigger the base is what you've said as well. The more the peak, the more you can get a peak at the top, is in terms of the explosive stuff, if they want that, or the speed. But it's all about building a base, especially at that age. Couldn't agree more. Automatic areas that you focus on, or it's just generally fix the weak links and get them stronger.
Yeah, it is the same like with every other athlete in any other sport. So you want to see what they need for the sport. With swimming, just a general good base of strength. The interesting thing with swimmers is their lower body strength is not as good compared to their upper body strength, which makes sense because the only time they really need to really express power and strength is at the start and when they do the turns in the water. But for the rest of the time, like, it's mostly like the flutter kicks, so you don't really go through a full range of motion with your legs. With your arms, you're using them a lot more, so it makes sense that they're stronger in upper body. Quite interesting actually that, like, they're on average their bench press is as much as their back squat. I was really surprised by that, but it's interesting to me to see that. So I know how they are like, what is their profile like, and if they are strong benchers and not that good squatters, that's okay. They don't have to squat double body weight. That's all right. It's not necessary for the sport. Yeah. And yeah, the weak links, as you said, that's what they have to work on. Mostly for swimmers is shoulders and lower back. Some have knee issues, but that's mostly it. And yeah, so for me, my job or my understanding is making these regions really strong and bulletproof, and then having a strong base and being able to do the bigger lifts well, and also being able to do more volume and intensity in the water, because in the end, that's what it's all about for them.
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah. In terms of them, you go about them with your rugby players.
Yeah, they're very different sports, obviously, but the approach for me is exactly the same. Like, I have to look at what they're doing, what they need in the field. The biggest difference, of course, is that it's a running-based sport. So the lower limbs are a lot more important to bulletproof those, the knees, ankles, especially, and the hip. But the demands are different. So rugby players need a lot more muscle mass. They need to be a lot more stronger. They can move heavier weights for sure. It's much more necessary for them just to be able to handle impact from opponent players, and also to have good speed on the field. You need some strength levels as well. Yeah, but I focus similarly. I focus on the weak links for each player. They are a bit different, like as I said, could be shoulder as well, but it's mostly knee, hip, and like calf or ankle injuries. And then I get them strong. Could be that a player doesn't need to be strong, but he needs more speed, then we work on that. Or if a player really needs to gain mass, then that's the focus. Or more endurance as well, that could be the issue. But first of all, yeah, I want to get rid of the weak links, like bulletproof the joints, the big joints, shoulders, hips, knees, and ankles, and then go from there. And when that is all safe and sound, then it's easy to on top of that work in the big lifts and really throw some weights around.
But do you, in terms of once you have, let's say, the weak links taken care of, do you have any key performance indicators for your rugby players that you'd like, generally speaking, like whether that they want to be hitting certain percentage of their back squat, or is it a bench press, or a certain type of deadlift? What do you have any kind of measurement or assessments that you'd like your rugby players to hit?
That really depends. I don't really calculate the numbers too much. Like, it's because they are not at the highest levels, so it's not like this top 1 or 2% that they need to improve on. But yeah, I can see if a player is really strong. Like, I have this one guy who deadlifts a ton, like over 200 kilos. He doesn't need to improve that's for sure. But he can work on explosive power, like using some Olympic lifting or jumps and bounds and sprints. And then other players, especially the younger guys, 18, 19, 20 years old, they can still get stronger on every lift. Like, as a good rough estimate for a forward player, it's good to squat double your body weight. For a backs player, it can be a bit less, but that's just a rough estimate. Like, for some players, it comes very easy. For others, it doesn't. But yeah, if you're a good player or not doesn't depend too much on your weight room numbers, but they help, of course. Yeah, so I really try to see for each player what is his weakness and what is his strength as well, because the strength, I want to keep the strength as well. If this guy deadlifts a lot, he can still continue deadlifting from time to time, but he doesn't have to put any effort into that.
Yeah, I think, it's good. Like, you want to get your rugby players strong as possible, and then once they're at a certain level, then you incorporate the faster movements, the Olympic lifts, the bounds, and we're still not losing the strength side of stuff as well. Still not losing their strong points. And I know you're an ATG man like myself, Niels. One of our favorite topics. Explain, how you got involved in ATG and what effect it's had on yourself, both as an athlete and a coach.
So firstly, yeah, the most interesting thing that got me into ATG is the simplicity of the system and that it just works. So there are so many stories that prove that, so many cases that prove that you can bulletproof your joints, you can improve your lifts in the gym, you can improve your performance in your sport, but especially you have a lower risk of injury because you can do more in training. You're bulletproofing your joints and everything. So that's the first thing. And the system is really simple. Like, once you understand it, that you want to start from the ground up, you want to work on the smaller joints. Like when we look at the legs, for example, you want to get the ankles really strong and everything that is involved there, the calf and tibialis muscle. The knee, the same thing. You want to get really strong with your quads and hamstrings, but you also want to move them in all ranges of motion. So being bulletproof and strong, to me as well, that means that you can handle any situation and any range of motion, and you will not be in trouble for it. So especially when you're in a running-based sport like rugby, it can happen, like freak injuries happen all the time, and you are being put in some awkward positions through a tackle or something else, or while sprinting and changing directions. But if you are familiar with these positions and you are actually strong in these positions because you train them, then you have an advantage for sure, and the risk of injury it's so much lower. So to me, that's the beauty, and that's why I'm convinced that it's working, and that's how I'm using it as well.
Yeah, I think anyone that goes through the system and knows the system, it's very, very clear on how beneficial it is. And like that, in terms of the injury reduction point of view, is the most, most of these injuries are coming when they're in these, as it says, end range positions, when everything's stretched and lengthened, and there's not, or weak at that. Generally, athletes then are weak in those positions. But what the ATG system does so well is it's getting strong in all sorts of ranges, the short, mid, and the end ranges. So when you're put into these positions, you've got that, we'd say bulletproof and reserve there, that you're able to take the forces, and you're in particular your connective tissue as well. No, brilliant. Can you explain briefly about the ground up concept, and why most athletes are probably missing? Most athletes are missing that link in terms of starting with the ground up.
Yeah. So from the ground up, to me, it means, how I understand it, is like when you look at the body, the thing that keeps you in touch with earth, that's your foot and your ankle. Most people, they focus, when they work in the gym, they focus on just the big lifts, the big numbers, deadlift, back squat, maybe benching, but they don't take care of the ankles, the knees, the wrists and elbows as well, and the shoulders. And yeah, if these areas are not stable and they don't tolerate load as well, then you can't really push your other numbers, like that are more about the center of your body, or that move through the medium range of motion, where you want to express your strength, like let's say back squat. If your feet are weak and your ankles cannot really tolerate that much load, then you will not get stronger in the gym, and you will get injured much easier, because then when you put it on the field, when you run, and the forces that you have on your feet and on your tendons, your Achilles, whilst running full speed, you can't really replicate that in the gym. So the back squat is not the same load than when you have a sprint. That's like 7 to 10 times more than that. And that's why it's really important to bulletproof these joints. And for running, it's especially the ankle complex and all the muscles that are involved and tendons that are involved, because as I said, the highest forces you have while running. And in my eyes, running, sprinting, speed is the biggest factor in a team sport, running based sport like rugby. You will always be picked over another player when you're faster, and you will always win a race when you're faster than your opponent. So it's a huge factor, and that's why it's important to have the basics down, and to have the ground, from the ground up, being really strong and bulletproof.
Yeah, 100%. And I think one of the geniuses of Ben Patrick and ATG is how he's popularized the lower limb training. Yes, athletes and myself, we may have done it, but it would have been a token gesture at the end of a session, maybe, and it might be 3 sets of 10 in a standing calf raise. But really, Ben Patrick, what he's done is how he's put the importance, shown, how important it is to have strong tibias, your soleus and your gastro, and how that has an effect to be able to handle the forces from an injury point of view, and also been able to produce force. It's not to say that you're going to get flying, you're going to have a PB sprint and, sub 10 seconds, just be strengthen your lower limbs. But it's going to definitely help in the bigger picture of, as you says, getting faster, even change your direction, and most importantly, the injury reduction point of view. Yeah, brilliant. In terms of the ATG stuff, the speed stuff there you've just touched on as well, Niels. How do you program your speed? Obviously, you put a big importance there. You say, as you says, it's the difference at the highest level of getting picked and not picked and getting to the ball. How do you incorporate speed work with your rugby players?
Yeah, I guess that's a question that many people don't know how to answer well, like especially in amateur clubs, because you don't have people who actually know the stuff. And people are scared of sprinting because it's the highest force that you can put on your lower body, for sure. But it's important to train it. So, like, usually in the game, let's say you have a game on the weekend, Saturday or Sunday. That's your highest impact in the week. At least it should be if you put in full effort. But yeah, so you need some time to recover from there. Like, let's give it a couple of days. And then with the rugby players, because they train 2 times per week, which is not a lot, but it's amateur. So I incorporate in the warm-ups, I incorporate some type of speed work every time. So some accelerations, some technical drills, and then also a longer type of sprint. Mostly on the earlier weekdays, like Tuesday instead of Thursday, just to have recovery from that as well. But it's extremely important to hit this highest velocity speed more than once, because mostly during the game, no player will ever hit their highest velocity. It's really rare. Also not in a straight line, because you have to run around players, you're running in curved lines. So it's really hard to get to that speed, but you want to be prepared for when that happens. And if you've never done it, but it happens in a game, then you will be in trouble, probably. The risk of injury just goes up immensely. That's why, yeah, I like to just sprinkle in sprint work every time that we have a session. It doesn't have to be much. It can even be just 1 or 2 sprints, 1 or 2 accelerations, and then 1 or 2 longer sprints. And that's it, just to expose the players to these types of forces and this type of high speed.
Yeah, 100%. And yeah, definitely from an injury reduction standpoint, as you said, exposing the players to those high velocities, but also even to maintain or improve the speed. If you're not going, if you're not running max velocity, whether once a week even, you're going to detrain that quality. 5 days, give or take 2 days, you can lose speed. So if you're not hitting anywhere close to your max speed, you're going to detrain that quality. So yeah, couldn't agree more. And I think the warm up is a good way to get the sprinkling in, as you says, without having to do an extra session. When the lads are relatively fresh, depending on how far or how close the previous game was. And yeah, I'd definitely be in that camp of at least 1 or 2 max velocity runs per week, even in season. Definitely. In terms of the in-season program design, in terms of the strength program, what's your approach on that? And yeah, what is your approach with your strength training work within in season?
Yeah. So to me, my understanding is that strength training in season is underrated, and you can improve on your strength numbers, and you can train hard in the gym as well in season. You just have to maybe not do that much volume or take less time for it, but there you can always hit a big lift and feel good and strong during the week, and then have a good game on the weekend. So how I like to structure, usually these guys that I work with, they train 2 to 4 times per week. You can do 5 times if you feel like it. You can do once per week and you will still get results. But it's important that you're doing something, because strength decreases if you don't use it. And same with speed. And it decreases much faster than in endurance. So it's important to do it. And yeah, I want to hit big lifts. I want to hit big numbers. How I structure a session usually is start with some bulletproofing work, like what we touched on earlier. Do some short range work to get blood flow in. So working the shortest range that the muscle can have, get blood flow in and get the nervous system ready to do more work. Then doing some power work, doing some strength work. It doesn't have to be a lot again. Like it can be just one rep that you're doing at a heavy weight, or what I really enjoy, and you know it as well, the dense training system, that you have a short amount of time. You do on the minute sets for 5 or 10 minutes. You do 1 or 3 reps. It doesn't have to be more in season, depending on the player. And you get a lot of work done at a good weight. You feel strong and you feel powerful, and you can come back the next day and do it again, or you can come back next week and do it better and hit a new PB. And that to me is really important. Like when I get players to the gym, it shouldn't just be 2 hours of scrolling on your phone and then feeling tired afterwards. But you want to leave the gym and you want to feel fitter than afterwards. You want to feel stronger and you want to feel ready for the next day and for the next game. So that's my approach and philosophy in general.
Yeah, no, great stuff. And I think the dense strength blocks, is what you just mentioned there, are absolutely ideal for in season. You know, having, let's say, a 10 or 5 minute block, the players, there's intent straight away. So if they're on the clock, they can't mess around. But also then as well, if you're doing 10D1, which is, as you says, on the minute, 1 rep, which is around 85 to 90%, you're hitting that high end of max, near the max strength work, without absolutely going 1 RM. So you're still leaving a little bit in the tank, but you're hitting those high threshold motor units at the same time, hitting that 85 to 90%. You're getting a high amount of good quality reps in there. Plus, it's a short amount of time, so the heart rates keep going again. And then it's intent. And the session is generally going to be shorter because it's condensed with a dense strength block. Yeah, I think for in season, especially keeping and improving your strength levels, I think the dense strength blocks are absolutely perfect for. So that's ideal. No, that's brilliant. That's all great. Yeah, in season. Look, we covered a lot of good range of topics. I suppose just to leave on now, Niels, is what are you reading? What are you learning at the moment?
Yeah, so I actually diving more into more sophisticated training programs, to like a conjugate system, how to apply that, and really get the most out of the programs that I'm giving to my athletes, and being able to give everyone what they individually need. So I always want to improve on that and how to apply methods that are working. I'm always looking for how other people are doing it and if I can learn from there. And like we have great amount of knowledge in ATG and as well in Uncommon Success with everyone who's involved there. So I'm learning a lot every time from other sports as well. I love to look at other sports, see what they're doing, and then see what I can extract from that and use for my sport, be it rugby or swimming. So yeah, there's always something to learn.
Absolutely. I was just going to say, you never stop learning in this game, and there's always something else you want to learn as soon as you learn the previous. So yeah, no, great stuff, Niels. And if people want to find more about your stuff, work with yourself, where is best to find and locate you?
Yeah, thanks. So the easiest is my Instagram account. It's athletic.coach.niels. Yeah, and you can contact me there for sure. That's the easiest.
Brilliant stuff, Niels. Thanks very much for your time, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you, Adam.